I will turn our volume up, and greetings and salutations, travelers. Welcome back to the Inn of Planar Crossroads, and welcome back to our I was getting confused. Welcome to our Misadventures in the Southern Colony continued, our Misadventures continued game, and we are back with session 5. Before we begin, let's go ahead and get announcements out of the way. Always less than 5 minutes. You can time me. Here we go. The Inn of Planar Crossroads has both its Subscribe Star and Patreon going on, so if you want to get in on either one of those to support the channel, you can. We also have started to change the tiers up a little bit and the benefits. That will take effect in the month of June. So in the month of June, we will start activating those miniature prints for people and stuff like that at certain tiers. The Patreon information has already been updated, so by the time this comes out, you will already have that information there available for you on the Patreon. We'll come out with a video a little bit later that has all of that explained for everybody in a more clear manner, single video manner. But that's for later. Another announcement is that the Inn of Planar Crossroads is going to be doing its, I believe by the time this comes out, we're going to have already done our 500 subscriber one-shot, because we've already put out the announcement and stuff like that. People are responding. We'll give them a little while to respond, and then we're going to do the actual game, so we'll be putting that out there soon. I don't think we have a lot more after that. There's not a lot of announcements to go through aside from the Patreon changes. So, let's go ahead and get in the game, or at least start to get into it. Before we do, our disclaimer, this is a kid-friendly or family-friendly broadcast, so that if you want to listen to this adventure with your kids, you can. It will still have fun adventure, high adventure type stuff happen, but it will not be anything that shouldn't be at least moderately suitable for children, considering that we're playing with a child. So there you go. Anyway.
Also, what does party level 1 mean?
Party level 1 means that's what your level is. You're a party of 1 when we last left off, so. And your level was 1. Now your level will go up later on. You'll get some experience and stuff like that, which probably will happen fairly soon depending on your actions. So you'll get to buy some more stuff with the points. So better abilities and things like that. But let's go ahead and get in the game now that we have our disclaimer of this being a at least kid-friendly-ish type of game.
Well, as friendly as a town disappearing is.
Yes. So, you are when last we left Caesar, he had made his way down below, interacted with the dark folk down there who were studying some kind of and investigating some kind of ruins that he found down there, probably from long ancient time. And now we come to the point where he had made his way down after having to deal with the fact that they discovered him. He had to make his way down this spiral staircase down to what they had been reluctant to go towards, which was this large floating disc of thick stone above a pillar in darkness, basically. And this 150-foot-ish bridge that seemed to go out into the darkness with this pillar that seemed to be set up in the darkness. This large pillar with this large disc over it that had cracks in it, but they were portions of it that were not breaking apart from being broken, but breaking apart and separating like a puzzle piece would. The glow coming out of it being very faint but ebbing and flowing up and down to brightness, making it pretty much daylight level brightness in there-ish. Now, while he was investigating it, while he was looking at that, a dark folk had snuck up behind him that he had failed to notice, and it gave him a little bit of a backstab that did quite a bit of damage, considering that that's kind of what a dark folk's whole shtick is.
And not a backstab like someone betraying, a literal backstab.
Yes, a literal backstab. So, that did not go very well for him, but that blood spilled out, and as he started to engage in combat with the dark folk, the blood seemed to be animated as this bluish light that had been emanating, it kind of struck out in a smoke-like tendril. A smoke-like tendril swooped out and struck the blood of Caesar, and it completely changed and morphed into this young figure, probably around 8 to 10 years old.
It looks like. He may have been trapped in that sphere.
It's not a sphere, it's a disc.
For a very long time.
You don't know?
That's just how he looks. He may have Jack of all ages.
You mean be ageless?
Yes.
That is a perk that is available. So we came to that point, and that thing animated. That portion of that animated, and the dark folk had backed off from Caesar because he immediately changed back into a dragon again. Because he had been shifting back and forth. He was a snake, and then a dragon, and then a gnome, and then back to a dragon. So he keeps shifting back and forth on what he appears to them.
A very big-looking dragon, but it still has the stats of a young dragon.
Yes, he was able to roll well enough to expand out to look like an older dragon, but it definitely was not that in statistics. He was unable to really fill out that power and fully grasp and understand that power to be able to imitate it. The dark folk had backed off because whether he knew or not that thing was a fake dragon or not, it's not really fake because he can do stuff, but it was a shape change dragon or not was irrelevant. That thing was still a big dragon that could have roasted him or something like that. So he backed off into the hallway that they had come out of onto the bridge and called for reinforcements. Well, while he did that, the boy was woken up by Caesar, and he kind of woke up surprised and didn't know what to think, so he grabbed his shield and readied his spear, and Caesar tried to talk to him, but he didn't talk back. He kind of just shook his head. And then Caesar, when he changed into that, when he didn't wake him up as a dragon, he woke him up as a knight in armor and stuff like that. So that would have changed the perception. He didn't go towards the boy aggressively. Instead, he pointed and was going to fight against the dark folk that were there. Now, unfortunately for Caesar, the dark folk had ranged weapons, and they are pretty good at using their ranged weapons, which means they got they struck out at him with it, and they took him to unconsciousness. But before he fell into unconsciousness, he reverted back to his regular form because he has to think to maintain certain things and stuff like that. That's how we're playing it anyway. And he saw the boy, the shield boy, come between him and the oncoming dark folk wave. And the boy had struck his shield, ringing out a noise and a tone, and basically stood between the oncoming dark folk and this now normal looking Caesar. He's in his normal base form, and that's kind of where we left off. So picking back up, Caesar goes in and out of consciousness as he sees the battle, as he senses the battle going on. His eyes kind of lull open and closed every now and then, and he sees the boy, and he sees him fighting off and pushing back some of the dark folk, but it's so fragmented. He sees the fight, and then he feels a boy, he thinks the boy, based upon size and stuff, pick him up, and as he's picked up, he hears a ting-ting off the boy's shield, and the boy's in this battered leatherish armor, and he feels himself move backward. He knows that that's where the stone is. What's going on? And he feels himself jump up, the boy jump up, holding him towards the disc itself, which in his fragmented visualizations of it and his fragmented sight, he sees that it has opened up even more. And he also sees, as he's jumping into basically this light, Caesar sees, as the boy's carrying him, that the blood that has fallen on, the blood of the dark folk that has fallen onto the what was it? The pillar there, it has also had tendrils of light smoke latch onto it, but it has come out and started to form unnatural looking things, not like the boy, but instead things like you would see in Granny Snook's sister's test tubes and magical experiments and amalgamations of things, and it looked like a weird mashup of something bestial with this dark folk blood, and who didn't even always get a full form. And you could see that that while the dark folk were fighting against the boy, they had turned some of their attention away from that as he leapt through, and that gave him a window, because those things were hostile to the dark folk as well as the boy. And so he jumps through, and you feel this pulling and a heavy kind of pull forward into this bluish white light that's around you, and your eyes go dim. And all you really sense is the feeling of movement. But it kind of slows, and then there's this floating feeling, and you kind of drift off. The next time that Caesar opens his eyes, he is on some grass. He feels some grass. Or is it moss? It doesn't feel tall enough to be grass. But he's laying on it. That's where he finds himself. He just feels himself laying there. He hasn't even opened his eyes yet. What does Caesar do?
I open my eyes for one. He opens his eyes for one.
He opens one of his eyes, you mean?
Both.
Oh, both. Okay. So, as you open your eyes, you see that you're not in a grassy field, for sure. But there's this, you're laying on kind of some, probably the best description would be a boulder, but it's work stone. but it's a boulder that has a very, very thick bit of moss on it that has grown tall enough to be like short grass, and you're laying on it. It's very dark where you are. Not dark enough that you can't necessarily see something, but dark. There's
like night dark?
Kind of like that. And you kind of look around at the different area around you, and you see that the boy is over there, and you're in a, as best you can tell, it's worked stone, probably in like a stone building or something like that. Maybe you're in a basement with as dark as it looks, but as you look up, you don't see any ceiling, so you're not sure where the ceiling might be. You see it's just dark up there. You see an exit to the right and to the left. You see the spot where you're laying. You see the boy over there. He actually has a fire going, and it should be able to show you, the light coming from it should be able to show you a ceiling, but there is not one.
So maybe we're at the bottom of that thing?
Don't know.
So what is the boy currently doing?
He appears to be roasting something.
What does it look like?
His back's to you. You can't really see.
Well, I start to get off of what I am laying on.
Okay. So you start to get up, and you hear the small crackle of fire, and you get up, and the boy kind of turns his head to you, and he turns his body around and offers something to you. It looks like something he was roasting, one of the things he was roasting. He was apparently roasting too. Do you take a look at it and stuff, or you just take and eat it?
I see what it is.
Okay.
So I'm kind of picky about what I eat.
Okay.
I don't want to eat dirt.
It doesn't look like dirt. He wasn't roasting dirt.
I know, but people could, and I don't want to eat glowworms either.
Okay.
Roasted glowworms.
Well, the thing that he's handing you, you see that he's already started eating on one. And he takes it off the little bitty fire, and he starts to hand it to you, and you kind of come over and start to take it. It looks like, you pick it up and you look at it. It looks like, kind of like a rat, but its tail, the back part of its hindquarters seems to be like a lizard. And the front part of its face, its eyes aren't rat eyes, they're insectoid eyes, and it has mandibles instead of teeth.
Do you think
inside
I
its
could...
jaws.
For one, I eat it.
Okay, you say you're picky about what you eat, but you eat that. Okay.
Yeah, but I don't want to eat the tail or face or eyeballs.
You just eat the part that looks like a rat?
Yes.
Okay, well that will be mainly the middle part of it. So you do find that you are pretty hungry, but you pick around and you kind of eat that. He doesn't say anything. I mean, he looks at you sometimes and goes back to his eating and will wipe his hands on his
leather
he's
stuff.
got a... Yeah, he does. He doesn't wipe it on the leather. He wipes it on the cloth beneath his the skirt of his leather protectant outfit, kind of like those strips of leather that we talked about that were put together. There's apparently some cloth underneath that, and he wipes his hands on the cloth underneath there.
What if that's his napkin system?
Apparently.
And do you think he has been living in this?
Possibly. You don't know.
Well, if he came from my blood, well, Caesar's blood, then how could he be living in here?
You don't know. I mean, you didn't know your blood could do anything like that. You can make me a logic roll if you want to try and to get any kind of ideas about what it might be, just off the top of off of what Caesar has known or thought about?
Daddy, I want to try and see if I know that I've never seen one of those things. And see, neither has Caesar.
Caesar seen one of what things?
Caesar has never seen one of those.
Rat things?
Yes.
Right. This is something you have not seen. It looks like an amalgamation of different things. So, you can tell that the rat thing did kind of have fur at one time. So it is like 3 different things that have been smushed together, but you're not sure that it's actually not supposed to be that way, because it does look very different. As far as figuring things out, you didn't roll, so we're just going to go with the idea that it doesn't all seem necessarily like you've never seen your blood be able to give anybody back or do anything like make something else, because you've seen your own blood before.
Like if I cut myself on my little knife skinning something.
Right. And usually when you do that, if it's enough blood, you absorb it back in. If it's not, it just stays there. It's not something crazy that's been different for you, much different than a human bleeding. So you guys kind of eat in silence. And
so what does the blood look like? Is it like a green color or is it black?
Caesar's?
Red? Yes.
I don't know. I thought it was like black, but it can be whatever color you really care for it to be. So you guys eat in pretty much silence. He doesn't say anything to you. On the stone walls, there's these, similar to like you saw in the cave before, there's these glowing symbols. Ones you're not familiar with, but they do look like the ones that were in the cave before, that you were in, that the dark folk were talking about. But this does not look like that place. This place has, worked stone floors. It's got worked stone semi-worked stone on the side. It looks more like these are rougher cut and are in a basement or something like that type of quality stone versus something that people see a lot. And you can't see the ceiling. You can't really hear much going on around you. It's very quiet, and you and the boys continue to sit there.
Daddy, this just popped in my head, but what if I could grow long legs?
You technically can grow up to 4 times your height. And we've said before that you are, what was it? Like 6 feet tall, I think we said? Something like that. 6 through 7 feet tall. Right, so that's why you can go down to about 1.5 feet. So, anyway, that's what you see, the world around you. The boy kind of, after he's finished, because he finishes before you, he picks up his shield and kind of looks it over and starts to push and kind of bend on it. You see that it's got tinks and dinks in it where it's been hit. He personally appears fine and undamaged, but the shields and stuff like that seem to have some wear and tear on them. And the spear.
Daddy, do I see anything? Do I see anything that would like stones that are just there I can pick up or something?
Over by where you were, there was some rubble, and you guys are sitting on some broken stone.
I go over where I was, and is there one that's like this?
Sharp, you mean? Pointed?
No, that's almost pointed.
Like a cone?
Sort of.
Not really. These all seem to be pieces of wall that were broken. Now, none of the walls here seem to be broken, except near the one where you are, where the lichen and moss have grown into this makeshift bed setup. There seems to be some collapse in there.
Is there a small stone about this big? I know they can't see me, but...
About the size of an ostrich egg?
Is it the size of an ostrich egg?
Right about.
Oh, yes, then.
Yeah, there's a rough one like about that size.
I'd like to take that one. And what do I have in my bag again?
You have several things in your bag. Okay, right now you have a dagger, a light crossbow, saw blade, some light armor. We can say that you also did have a few things like a rope. So you have a rope and stuff like that. You were just going into town to check on why it was so quiet. You weren't going for an adventure, so you got a rope.
I only took a rope, and most likely I had some stones with me because usually, sometimes people just like throwing stones over a lake or a pond.
Some small stones, okay. So that's there. But as far as anything else, it's not something that you necessarily know you have.
I take the rope and some of my small stones and that, and I try and make a little thing I saw at in the town, like a sharpener or something like that. A small sharpener that goes like this.
A whetstone, you mean?
What?
Okay, a sharpening stone is a specific type of stone. You don't just use any old stone to sharpen stuff. This stone doesn't appear to be that type of stone. This appears to be more like a gray granite type stone.
What type of stone do I need?
Not that.
I know that, but what type of stone?
One that is not here. So what else? So what are you going to do?
What can I make?
Well, that depends on what you're wanting to do. What are you wanting to do?
I am wanting to, well, you know what? I could just use one of those small stones. I, look around at that exit.
Okay.
The
so
exit
there's
to
an exit.
the right.
Okie dokie. So you've got a exit on your left and an exit on your right.
I look at the exit on the right.
Okay. So, you go over to the right and you start to look through the door. The boy kind of looks up as you do and kind of watches. And, you get close to the door on the right and he taps his spear on his shield.
I go back and I ask, I don't know if he can talk.
Well, what I mean is he taps it on his shield to kind of make some noise, and when you look back to see what he's doing, he kind of looks at you and shakes his head and looks at that door and shakes his head.
He may not be able to talk then.
I don't know. He hasn't spoken this whole time.
I ask him, do you know how to talk? Common language.
He kind of looks at you and he doesn't say anything. He just kind of points at his throat. And he shakes his head and points at his throat.
So he probably lost his voice, or something happened with his voice box.
That's kind of the idea that you would get.
So I go over, and what is he doing?
He was messing with his shield and stuff at the moment.
I ask what's over there.
He looks up at you and looks over there, and he kind of thinks for a second, and you point over that way again, like over there, and he kind of looks, and you think there may be a language barrier, not just that he can't talk, but also that he doesn't always understand all the things you're saying. So, not that he's dumb, just that he doesn't understand your language. So he kind of looks over there and he points, and then he goes, "Arr." He doesn't make the noise, but he goes, "Arr, arr," with his hands into claws, and bites his teeth and stuff and snarls, and points over that way.
So then I ask, if that's over there, then what's over there?
You point to the left door?
Yes.
Okay. So when you point to the left door, he kind of looks at you and he goes, he thinks for a second, and then he looks up and he points up. And then he points over there at the left door, and he points up. And he just kind of shrugs like that.
Do I say, could I go over there then? If he's pointing up. And if he's pointing up, that probably means we're at the bottom of that black thing, if there is a bottom.
You don't know. You kind of motion about going over there, and he nods and he picks up a stick out of the fire, and it looks like, as you kind of look at the fire, it looks like he has broken what appears to be furniture to make the fire. And it is a small fire. It's not like he's used a lot of wood to do it, to cook those things, but he's used enough. So he picks up a piece of wood that has a flame on it, and he kind of walks with you over there, and he peeks out first and looks around, and then he starts to make his way through what he's doing. You see that this comes out into a hallway on the left door. It comes out into a hallway that goes to the left and to the right. He goes to the right after looking both ways. You come up on a left, and he goes straight. Basically, for the rest of the time, you do see that it veers off one or two times, but he doesn't take those hallways. He goes basically to the straight. You go 1, 2, about 3. It's hard to gauge in the dark, but you're guessing based upon how wide the hallways are. They're about 10 foot wide, each hallway, and you're passing at least 3 of them that go off to one side or the other, and you're passing a room that's like 3 hallways. So you're looking at 90, 100 feet maybe, and then it comes to a flat space, and he looks around some more before coming out into the flat space with you, and the stones still having this lightly glowing, and it's really, really light, like it was at the very beginning of the stairs. Really, really light, but it's easier to see in the darkness. This light ebb and flow, and he takes you there, and he kind of holds up and points up a little bit, and you see that you've come into a space, and there is the disc, and it looks like the same disc, but it's open more, and that glow within it is fainter than it was in the other cavern, and it's faint like the writing on the wall, and you see this kind of ebb and flow of the light, and Caesar starts to step forward to get a better look, and he puts his hand on you, and he shakes his head no, and he holds out the torch, and he shows you that the entire portion of the rest of this open room which goes off to the left and to the right some, is broken off. And there's nothing there. And he shows you that not only is there nothing there, but he kind of has you hold the torch, and he reaches his hand around and touches the bottom of the stone. There doesn't seem to be anything underneath. This whole thing seems to be floating. At least in this area, just like the disc is.
I motioned that I could make a bridge, or I could use that rope and that egg-looking stone, the egg-shaped stone, or the stone that's the size of an ostrich egg, and I could use that to get across.
You kind of talk about that with him, or you kind of show that to him and kind of swing to go and do that. Do you want to try that? He's like, he shrugs. He apparently hasn't tried that before.
How tall is it?
You mean how far is it away?
No, how tall is it?
How tall is what?
The place that we're in.
You can't see the ceiling. Far as you know, it's black up there.
So how wide is it? And how far? And how long this way and how long that way?
Is what? The room you're in?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so you kind of walk one way and then the other, and it seems like you walk about 30 feet to the, we'll say to the left of where you entered, and you see that's the edge of the wherever you are starts to come in, and it meets up with the wall. So about 30 feet that way, and then it just seems to drop off. You go back the other way. It's only about 15 feet that way, and it drops off.
Okay, so I asked him, which way would you want to go?
In this room?
Yes.
This room,
So, wait, is it have hallways this way and this way, or is it just straight?
Well, what he's done is he's led you to the edge of a broken off room that has the disc floating there.
Okay, is there a platform where the disc is?
No, the disc seems to be floating there. And now it is close. It's only like about 10 feet away from the 10 or 15 feet away from the edge of this room here that has been broken off.
Okay, could I get on the thing, the floating thing?
On the disc?
Mm-hmm.
The disc itself is about as thick as a cinder block would be. So it's not a very thick disc to get onto and stand on top of. And it is floating upright.
I think how the way you're explaining it, I didn't think that it was that way. I thought you meant like
a flat disc, not a disc standing up?
No, I meant like a round one.
It is a round disc.
Like this way and this way.
A sphere?
Yes.
It is not a sphere. It is a round disc that is about this big, like a plate.
Wait, you mean how long a cinder block is?
Right, about as long as a cinder block, we'll say. Not as thick as a cinder block, that was the wrong word. As long as a cinder block is, that's about how thick it is. So about foot and a half, 2 feet thick.
Okay.
2 feet is what it would be, yeah, I think.
Is there a portal looking thing there?
The glowing portion of it is really faint, but you can tell that it's there. You know that it's there because it's really dark here, so you can definitely tell. But also, it seems to be held together by that. Now, as you guys are looking around, one of the things you see is it starts to glow and glow and glow and get brighter, and you You guys kind of back up a little bit, and the shield boy kind of tugs on you and pulls you back to where the archway is that you came through out of the hallway. And you guys watch, and it gets really bright for a second, like it was in the cave, and then you see shoot out of it some of that glowing mist, and it forms into a dark folk. But the dark folk is bluish.
Like the spirit of a dark folk. Uh-huh. Mm-hmm.
Something like that. And you see it, and it just kind of floats off and away from where you are.
Is the glow still there?
Well, the glow fades after that happens. It goes whoosh, and then it fades down back to its very soft glow.
I motioned to him. Can you hold this side of the rope?
So you kind of motion for him to hold the rope, and he's kind of like... So he holds the rope.
I turn into a me, but just I take wings.
So you put wings on yourself?
Yes.
To fly, so...
Yes.
Well, basically, we can do that pretty easily. That's just your alteration.
It's just me, but I have wings back here a bit.
Okay.
And I have a flying ability because I ranked myself up by taking a couple points out.
Yeah, you did that when you made him, so that you could be able to fly if something had flight. Yeah. And you're basically just altering yourself, so it's not a big deal. You've practiced that before.
I fly over to the disc.
Okay, you want to...
I want to try and... I motion... Pull me back if anything happens, please. Please. So I kind of tie that to me.
Okay. He seems to kind of get the drift of what you're saying. You don't know if he understands fully your plan, but he understands the idea of if something bad happens, pull you back.
Okay, I fly over to the disc.
Okay. So you kind of start out and you kind of flap up a bit, and as you start to fly, it's pretty easy to get a little takeoff going. When you get over the edge, there's this odd sensation of flying but also falling, because you feel yourself go forward and up, and then you kind of gravity starts to act funny, and you start to flop back down. And you flop back down, but you're on the other side of the room. You're on the bottom side of the room.
So, I'm glad I had a long enough rope.
Yes.
And, so, the disc was there, and there was another part at this side, inside this side. So there's another part over here.
Well, you were at the edge of this broken off piece, like we said, yes? So that's what we understood. You try to take off and fly, but right around that edge there is this weird area where gravity doesn't seem to be working like you would expect it, so it took you off guard, and you flopped back down onto the bottom side. And now you're on the bottom side in a room below. And
I peek
you
back
see
over and look at him.
You see him run over and look, and he's looking, and your face pops out, and he's like, "Woo!" He flops backward, and he looks at you like, he shrugs and puts his arms up, and I'm like, what? Oh, kind of trying to figure out, because that's not something he had tried before.
I tell him gravity pulls to this side for some reason. That's what I try to tell him.
You see him not fully get what you're trying to say, and kind of looks, and so he kind of scoots his body around and backs his feet off first, and then backs his butt off, and he's hanging there, and he's kind of feeling this weird pull and fall back, and he's like, ooh. You can tell he does not like what's happening, and he kind of slips and he falls back, but he falls out and then back onto the bottom side. Looks around and silently laughs. Nervous. You can tell it's meant to be kind of nervous. And he hands you back your rope.
So I tie it back and put it in my backpack thingy, in my inventory.
Okie dokie. And so you've found this spot here, and it's like, oh. He shrugs. He's like, whoa.
I look and see if there's another door.
So you look around, and this room that you've come into seems to be somewhat smaller. There's a lot more rubble on this side, it appears, because the spot where you came over, where it meets up and goes up with the rest of that, it seems to be a lot more rubble, and this other side to the left and right have rubble on it. So the main portion of what you see is this smaller platform-esque portion that seems to also look out on that disc.
Okay. But do I see any ways I can go?
Yes, there seems to be a staircase, and it leads from your relative position up.
So
it's dark.
Basically leading down from top side.
It's three-dimensional space, so kind of yes. From where you are right now, it would lead a staircase upward in order to let you go down. It is difficult to explain with words, but for right now we'll say it's a
I know what
one leading up, and there's some torches there that are not lit but are there in sconces beside the doorway. The doorway does not have a door on it right now, but you can tell that it probably did at one time, as there's some really, really old and dead wood there that has kind of crumbled, and the hinges are often, some of it's off, and some of it's still attached to some of the wood.
Okay, so I walk there, or I actually crawl over there because I don't want to fall into the black abyss.
Well, you don't feel like you're going to fall into the black abyss because you're gravitating towards the stone, so.
I still crawl until I get into that tunnel thing.
Okay. So as you kind of look around, you still don't see any ceiling, but you kind of look up and you can tell that there's you look up from your relative position and you can tell that this is larger and more enclosed than the other side, because you can see a wall where you couldn't see a lot of wall before. You could see a wall now that leads upward and upward, and it still has the stone, the etchings in it, and so on.
Okay, so I go into the tube where the stairs are, and then I stand.
The archway?
Yes, and then I stand up.
Okay.
Wait, is there a roof to that?
There actually does appear to be a roof to this particular part of it. So you have the archway, and there is a roof. It goes up. This underside seems to be sized larger. So it's not just a 10-foot doorway, it's a 20-foot doorway.
So.
And it's about, probably 30 feet tall, the archway.
Okay, so I start walking. Is there any corners?
Corners? Well, you start to walk up
From my perspective.
From your perspective. So you start to walk up this little hall, this large hall, and as you do, you kind of turn around. You see that he's following you. He's got his shield out and his spear out, and he kind of smiles and looks around and nods. And he looks around a bit, and you hear,
I turn into a cat.
and that's where we'll leave it this time.
Hasn't been an hour.
It has been about 50 minutes. So
It hasn't been 10 more.
yes,
It
but
has
in
to
10
be-
more, this was a good place to stop because
No.
it's a dramatic place. Yep, it's a dramatic place to stop.
You could have stopped if there was any combat, Daddy.
No,
Yes.
now is a good
Yes.
place to stop because it leaves with a mystery, so people will want to come back and listen some more. So, we hope you enjoyed, everybody.
And we'll do another one after this.
No, one today. So we hope you enjoyed. We hope you had a great time with it. We'll probably actually have to change the background, so I'll find like a generic labyrinth or something like that, some kind of stonework thing to put there. Not that it matters to those that are just listening, but I feel it would be probably better than having Kelligoth right there when we're not Kelligoth, the Southern Colony right there when we're not there. But otherwise, or we don't think we're there, we don't know if we're there. That's a better way to put it. Anyways, we hope you enjoyed. We hope you have a great day. God bless, enjoy, and do remember that everything you see here is brought to you by viewers like you. Thank you. Have a great day. God bless. Goodbye.
Bye. This content was made possible by travelers and viewers like you. Thank you.